Hello there, my friends, and welcome back to the Brightworks, where we have a little bit of an unconventional episode for you today. This is a little bit different than the usual cast that I'm doing, but it's well worth taking a look at. A new change has been proposed, and I really feel like I need to cover it because it could be absolutely game-breaking, or maybe not breaking, but game-redefining. I'm, of course, today going to be covering, as I'm sure the title has already pre-spoiled for you, the Air rework. So this has been brought to my attention in the not the Brightworks Discord, in the official Beyond All Reason Discord. As of last night, I was made aware of this around 2 a.m. my time. And it does some pretty crazy stuff. So we're going to take a really cursory look at some of the adjustments to the planes here. I haven't really gotten to experience any of it. I couldn't find a lobby. I wanted to play a match with it and try and get accustomed to it. I couldn't find a lobby that had it enabled, so I'm just going to be tinkering with it until this Saturday when we can mess around with it on the stream, just as we are always prone to do. Whenever one of these new proposed reworks comes out, we always play around with it and have some good fun. So, to no further ado, as you can see in front of you today, I do have all three commanders. I have a Armada commander out here on the right, I have a Cortex commander over here in the middle, and I have a Legion commander over on the left. Now, as far as I could see in my cursory testing here, as you see, I've got a whole play field of random things set up here for today. As far as I could tell, Legion is relatively unchanged. So they're not too tremendously changed. There's a little bit of a change in the T2 lab that I'll get into here in just a minute. But other than that, the Legion faction is pretty much, yeah, unchanged. We'll do a little bit of testing here in a moment because I'm not sure if one of the more significant changes applies to their fighters here. But certainly, as far as what they can build out of their labs, it's still relatively standard for the Legion faction. So what are some of the bigger changes? Well, there's a couple of really huge ones. We'll start off very small. We'll start off with some of the cursory stuff. As far as T1 pricing goes, you might notice that some of these are a little bit tweaked here. Now, some of the metal costs, some of the energy costs have all been, as far as I'm aware, have been shifted around so as to make them a little bit more balanced, try and balance out the new health of all these units. You might notice that a lot of these, especially the bombers, have much higher health. They're a little bit slower, though. Let me take this Whirlwind, for example, and set it on a patrol here, just so you can take a look at what that looks like. You can see the fighter, the Valiants, in the background there, but you can see the bomber is just egregiously slow now. Very, very slow, but it has a tremendous health pool, so it's much more sturdy and can stand up to fire a little bit thicker, a little bit sturdier. To reflect that across the board on all the factions, that has been updated in such a way that they are now, I believe it was like 15% more expensive or something like that. It's a minor thing, but it'll be well worth it, especially if you're a air player and you're really well, you very well keep track of how much each of your labs need in order to pay for. Just be aware that metal costs are going to be a little bit higher. The other thing is gunships, and I can show you the gunships using this T1 gunship. Now, astute viewers may notice, but I'll spill it out here for you. The gunship is much slower here. So the Banshees used to be quite a bit quicker, now very, very slow here. The Shuriken had its size reduced, so that was a big change for the Shuriken. It now is a little bit smaller. Its health has also been bumped just a little bit, but it still dies to light anti-air, so fear not, those light anti-air towers on the front will be enough to shoot down shurikens still, but anything from like those little anti-air bots on the ground are going to have a slightly harder time dealing with the shuriken. I know Jaguars, for one unit that could greatly suffer because their AA is so weak that it can't even take down a shuriken in one hit here. Now, aside from that, there's another massive change that was made to fighters here, and I'm going to demonstrate that using some of these Armada fighters right here. But before we do that, what I want to do is run a little test. So, all of the fighters are now much more maneuverable. Let's see if we can get a close-up of some of these units. Basically, what they did was they made the turning rate of all of the units a whole lot higher, so that these units can kind of bank and roll a lot more. Should make for some more interesting dogfights, but I have it lined up in such a way right now that we can get a first-hand look at it. So what I have on the screen, over in the Fog of War over here, there are 3 patches of 20 fighters, 20 Cortex fighters to be specific. As far as I'm aware, the Cortex fighters fire a little bit faster, and the Armada ones have a little bit more HP and a little bit longer range. Might also notice that these fighters can see out a little bit further than they used to be able to. That's another part of the changes here. This list is extensive, and it's a very, very long list. So if I miss something and you happen to know about it, feel free to leave a comment down below, as always. Let's see what these fighters can do here. I want to see them clash. So I'm going to set these on a or a patrol command over in this direction, and we should get to see 20 Armada fighters going up against 20 Cortex fighters here that I've handed over to an inactive AI over on the map. Wow, so immediately I'm noticing that these are way slower. Yeah, these air battles are way slower right now. You can see the missiles flying around, or, I mean, just feels like they're moving through molasses right here. Kind of cool, though. Like, it does make the air fights feel like they're taking a little bit longer, and okay, Armada fighters win. 20 Armada fighters versus 20 Cortex fighters right there. Okay, not bad. 2 Armada fighters come out of that with their heads still on shoulders. Very low in health, though. Still a pretty close match. Let's take a look at 20 Cortex fighters going up against 20 more Cortex fighters right here. I would consider this far from an official test. I just wanted to get a chance to see what the new fighters looked like in an actual battle here. Oh, not you. Oh, well, kind of messing it up already. Anywho. Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. They're way slower here. This is my first time actually getting to see the new fighters, so this is live reaction, right? This is a first-hand glance at what exactly is going on here. This is really interesting. Okay, so with the fighters being much more maneuverable, it really makes these dogfights a lot more interesting to watch. It also, like, it feels like the fighters are so much slower, but as far as, like, readability goes, as far as actual, you know, telling what's actually going on, I quite like it. Yeah, I think it actually works quite well here. Okay. Couple of couple of Cortex fighters, I almost said Legion fighters, a couple of Cortex fighters end up winning that one here. Now we have a bunch of the Legion fighters. For those that don't know, the Legion fighters are a scout / drone, so they're very weak, so I'm expecting these to probably lose here. We're gonna have to see. As far as I'm aware, they haven't been changed, although are they a little slower? Oh, I can't tell if they're a little slower or not. I guess we'll get to see here as we fight command these across the map. Now, these will have a tremendous vision advantage, so they should at the very least see the enemy fighters coming in from a mile away. Oh yeah, these oh, these don't do anything. Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay, so that pretty much confirms it here. Yeah, the Legion fighters have not been tweaked in whatever change they made. The health and the armor here for fighters has not affected the Legion. So those are going to need to be buffed immediately. As you see, that was a slaughter, an absolute massacre right there. Yeah, nobody came out on top from that one. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I mean, that's kind of as to be expected here. Not bad, but there is a little bit more that we need to cover here. So the next change is to the T2 labs, and you're probably gonna be pretty astonished when I click on these. We'll start with Legion because they have the least impact of a change. You might notice already, though, they have a torpedo bomber here. So this is a little bit interesting. What I read about this, the design proposal here for why this change was made is that they viewed the T2 lab sort of the same way that a T1 vehicle lab can still produce amphibious units. So you have your vehicle lab here, and I can show you this. You have the vehicle lab, but then you also have, so what is that? Oh, air repair pad. That's weird. It has 2 different, well, anyways. You have the vehicle repair pad, right? But there's also that amphibious, we're going to need a shipyard here to demonstrate that. There's also the amphibious vehicle plant that can produce a whole bunch of these units that are basically just the same as the ones that come out of these. Well, I guess this is a bad one to showcase. Legion doesn't have one. Let me show you with the Cortex faction here while I get this all queued up. So if we start up a ship here and we go ahead and put down, you can see amphibious lab right here can produce a whole bunch of amphibious units. So I have a whole bunch of the different units toggled on here, but you can see that it pumps out a whole bunch of different stuff. You can pump out manticores, pump out poison arrows, pump out all of this sort of stuff and things here. It's pretty expensive, but it allows you to get those units built under the sea. Similar for Cortex here, and you can see, so you can pump out these amphibious units here in this lab. So that's the change that they made, was sort of they wanted to yeah, keep things consistent in a way that was basically so that you could produce out of the T2 what you would be able to produce out of an amphibious lab. And so the amphibious lab for the seaplanes would be the seaplane gantry, and so now they've added some of those onto here. Now, notably, Cortex only has the seaplane bomber. They don't have any of the gunships or anything from the other faction, so that's a little bit interesting, something to keep in mind if you're going to be playing around with the Legion faction. They have certainly lost some power here, significantly lost some power here. You still have the Nighthawk, which is pretty good as a stealth fighter, and I want to, in fact, set up a little bit of a test over here. So we're going to send 20 Nighthawks over in this direction to go up against some of those T1 Valiants. But let's take a look at the Cortex while they're being set up. So you might notice immediately the bat has gotten significantly bigger. Yeah, the bat has turned into something of a menace right here, where it was before just a seaplane swarmer. It has now been changed into a, quote, heavy AoE seaplane fighter. Yeah, that thing is massive. It looks like a Star Destroyer, I'm not going to lie. This thing looks just giganormous. Tremendous size increase here for the bat. That might need a name change because the bat, I mean, it made a whole lot of sense when the bat was just a tiny little thing, but now that it's huge, I don't know if that's, you know, necessarily appropriate. Other than that, though, you can see that the other seaplane options are available here. We have the torpedo gunship, the seaplane gunship, the dam buster, as well as the dragon, which has been reworked slightly as well. So curious enough to see what this is going to be about. I believe we lost, yeah, all the fighters over here. So let's just self-destruct these, and what we'll do is we'll send 20 Nighthawks over in this direction here. And while those Nighthawks are headed over, why don't we take a look at what the Nighthawks can do against a whole bunch of Valiants. This is T2 up against T1, so the Nighthawks should reign supreme here, but I'm curious how one-sided this battle is going to be, right? Previously, it'd be not a efficient trade, but it would certainly be fairly positive for the Nighthawks. Yeah, I would say that's probably a whole lot more positive. Nighthawks absolutely crushing it over here. We're left with 12 out of the 20 versus the 20 Valiants that were here, losing 8 for 20. Yeah, so that's kind of what I expected. The T2 is going to be much more resistant to the T1 stuff, so you're really going to be behind in that technology field if you don't have that up and running already here. So okay, let's see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take these 20 Nighthawks and I'm going to hit H to hand them over to the AI over here.
T2 unit detected.
What that's going to mean is that the AI now has all of those, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up 20 of these bats. And it says that they're heavy AoE seaplane fighters, so I don't know what exactly that means, but we're going to take a look at that together. Meanwhile, I might as well show you the Cyclone over here, which is a changed version for the Armada T2 lab here. We have the Cyclone, which used to be, it's got a completely different model now, but it used to be a, same as the Bat, a swarmer plane. Now we're going to see what 20 of these bad boys look like, and maybe we'll put them up against 20 bats here in just a moment. Anyways, let's send these bats on over. See what these bad boys are all about. Send them on a attack path over here. So I'm curious what an AoE fighter is going to do here. I noticed they have a little cannon on the front of their Star Destroyer nose. I have genuinely no idea. This is the first time that I'm seeing them. It's a little bit of a scattered first look, but I guess that's you know, that's how we like to do things around here. God, they are slow. Talk about molasses, right? These guys are just incredibly painfully slow. Oh, what on earth? Okay, so they fire Banisher missiles. That's AoE. Okay, I get where their AoE is coming from. They're also incredibly sturdy right now. Holy, yeah, that is wild. Okay, so these are what a weird unit. Okay, that's really interesting. So they fire a Banisher missile, and also they're extremely tanky. So I don't know why. I was wondering what that was on top. I didn't realize that was a Banisher chamber. Now that I know what they fire, it makes perfect sense. That's pretty crazy. So that means that yeah, these Banishers are going to be going up against, I guess, yeah, if you have like clumped up T1 fighters, they're going to dispel them pretty quickly here. But also, it seems like they're sturdy enough. I mean, T2 really give them a run for their money. I can imagine T1 is just not going to even have a chance. I'm going to self-destruct these. What I'm going to do is send over 20 bats right here. And then we'll fight the bats against the Cyclones. How's that sound? What is that on the Cyclones right there? Guided air-to-air missile launcher. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see what we can find here. Send those over like that. You might notice I have a whole bunch of pawns over here. These are going to come in very handy here in just a moment as well. Because one of the other changes is that air units can now attack ground units. Which is, yeah, a little bit interesting here. Why don't I showcase that while we're waiting for these painfully slow units to move their way across the map? I mean, I guess these are extremely vulnerable to anti-air on the ground, right? Because, well, but no, because air units can now attack ground forces here. Let me show that off to you really quick before we go any further here. If I send this fighter over here, where this this now enemy pawn is sitting, there it is, firing away. Wow, that did 20% of that pawn. That feels pretty impressive, actually. So one of the other buffs was that ground units, plasma units, and laser units have a now standardized damage number against air units. And what that means is that they will no longer tickle. They will significantly hurt air units. So that's nice. At the very least, it's going to mean that air is going to have a bit of a more important role on the front lines. Okay. Bats are handed over. Let's send the Cyclones now to go see who wins in a 20v20 fight. It's bizarre to me how slowly these move. It's kind of nice, again, for readability, because oftentimes when the air fights would get started, it was just impossible to tell what was going on. I think this is going to improve readability, but also maybe when the numbers get higher, it's just going to be a cluttered mess regardless. We'll have to see as time goes on here. Okay. Oh, whoa, okay. We are... This is a mess. I can't tell what the missile was that the Cyclones fired there, but it looks like once they grouped up, those Banisher missiles did way more damage. Yeah, okay. That's quite interesting. Now, the other thing is gunships have been slowed down here, so maybe I'll pump out a Hornet real quick just to show you. And Hornet's still relatively quick here, actually, so... Yeah, that doesn't feel... It's definitely slower, but it doesn't feel ridiculously slow. The Hornet was never really the pinnacle of speed. It was always a pretty slow unit, so it doesn't feel like that's too tremendous of a change right there. But I think what we really want to see, I think what everybody's really waiting for, is seeing what a whole bunch of these Cyclone actually do against some ground units. So what we'll do is we'll take these pawns and we'll just kind of scatter them around over here. The dragon has been changed, by the way, in case you haven't seen on the stream. This is one of the other things that was in the works. It now has 4 turbo lasers mounted on its side, and it shoots a big cone of flame out from its nose. It also has a light anti-air. It's a little SAM turret on its back, which is always great. Pretty cool. Pretty cool new unit. More thematic, to say the very least. Much more of a dragon, if you ask me. Okay, units are down. Let's send in the Cyclones and see what they can do. I'm guessing that the fact that these can shoot a little bit of AoE makes them more of a harassment force on the front lines. That and the fact that they're so much slower, I guess, leaves them more vulnerable to, Oh. Well. Never mind. I guess these have no interest in shooting at the ground here. Interesting. Well, okay. That's odd. Why don't we send these on over here, and we'll have them fight the T2 fighters over there in just a minute. What I'm also curious about is seeing some T2 fighters go up against these little pawns now sitting around over there. These are the high winds, which have basically been tuned just the same way as everything else. So health slightly increased, speed slightly decreased. Now they should theoretically be able to attack ground. Let's see what we can find as they move on over here. What are they going to do against the pawns? The T1... Oh, they don't attack ground. Oh, interesting. Is that at all? They won't, so, okay. So only T1 fighters will attack ground. That's good to know. I was under the impression that it was all fighters that would attack ground, but it looks like that is not the case. How many are we over here? 12? Why don't we go ahead and top these guys up with 8, 9, 10. A couple more T2 fighters, just to try and help out, balance the numbers over there. So that's really interesting. So if only T2 can attack, or rather if only T1 can attack ground, that does mean that there's a little bit of an importance in keeping your T1 fighters available, right? Like if you want to be able to support your ground forces with T1, you're going to have to, or with air rather, you're going to have to keep your T1 around and producing those T1 fighters. That's really cool. That actually adds a lot of diversity between the different classes here, and it also means that the T2 fighters are very selectively going to be used as anti-air units, right? Like there's no point in keeping these on the front lines. They're basically going to be for sniping down your opponent's T1 when they send them out on the front lines. That's just my guess, my educated guess. I'm not sure if that's exactly what we're going to see as you know, time goes on, but it should be pretty close, I do imagine here. Okay, so we've got 20 high, we've actually got 19 high winds. Oh well. I'm sure it won't matter all too much. We'll hand these over to the AI, and then we'll send our gunships here, our Cyclones, in to collide with them and see what happens. So just a refresher, the Bats, which are the T2 AoE, what is it called again? AoE Seaplane Fighter here, produced out of the T2 lab for the Cortex, did phenomenally against 20, were those T1? No, those were T2. Yeah, they were high winds as well. They did phenomenally. They wiped them out, and there was barely any casualties here. They kind of suck. They overkill like crazy. It looks like they're really good at first, like when they can first fire, and then they just don't have any other weapons. I wonder if they're supposed to have like a weapon that fires, or if it really is meant to be both of those. Yeah, the Cyclone kind of terrible. That thing is absolutely abysmal. A little bit of a bummer. Yeah, it seems like the Bat is definitely the way to go. Cortex regaining air superiority here in the T2. just a little bit. Yeah, those for the longest time, EMP bombers and nuclear bombers were the pinnacle of aerial superiority, aerial technology. But it looks like Cortex might be significantly in the favor here as far as those AOE fighters, quote unquote AOE fighters, start to get involved here. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the roles that they're supposed to fill, but now I just want to see a whole bunch of T2 fighters rather collide with each other. I imagine this matchup is relatively stable. Like, this should be pretty much an easy win right here for the blue that vastly outnumbers the Nighthawks. Yeah, relatively one-sided. 5 losses for the blue against the 6 or so Nighthawks over there. Interesting. Okay, let's get a little composition of T1 fighters going. Send them all over here. Now the other question I have is, can the Legion T1 fighters attack ground? And it should be 10. Subtract that guy, yeah, 10. So let's send these over and see if they can attack ground. The T1, Cortex and T1 Armada could both attack ground, so this should be, they should be able to, but again, I don't think Cortex has been updated. No, it doesn't look like they have. So Cortex is, Legion is basically out of the game as far as air goes. If you're going to enable this rework, it's pretty much going to remove Cortex from being valid as the air player. So keep that in mind if you're playing as a Cortex, or I keep getting them mixed up, as a Legion player. Keep that in mind. You do not want to be going for air. Your air is vastly underpowered if you have this rework enabled. Okay, so let's go for a whole bunch of T1 air. Let's go for 10 T1 air from both factions here. Cortex and Armada. And let's go ahead and send these planes on in. So these now can fire at ground, right? Okay. And I mean, it's pretty effective. Like, this is non-negligible. This is certainly... Like, you can imagine you could use this for cleanup, right? If you just had a bunch of T1 fighters flying around in the background, you could easily shut some of these units down. I'm really curious to see how good they are against tanks. Let me just make some T1 medium tanks and see how those do. We'll just make 5 of them or so. But yeah, I mean, they kind of have a little bit of pathing issues just because of the fact that they have to... They don't really line up for an attack. They just fire whenever they think that a missile might be able to hit the enemy there. Just move these medium tanks over here, and we'll just... we'll use them for a little bit of target practice. Send them on over and hand them over to the enemy here. Send our fighters on over and let's see how well these do. This is kind of a simulation as if they had broken through, right? And they were sending a little bit of a run by. Let's see how the fighters manage it. You know what? That is not bad. These tanks are getting shredded pretty quick here. One pass, I guess you could say, one volley, and these are, well, some of them anyway, are looking pretty low. You know what? Yeah, the fighters do a significant amount of damage here. This is really interesting. So the fighters being pretty expensive might offset the fact that they're going to be very, very valuable now. They're 95 metal apiece, which is, I mean, compared to some of the cheaper T1, right? Like, imagine 95 metal is the same, almost the same as a Blitz tank. It's about half the cost, a little less than half the cost of a Stout, right? So significant price that you're paying for these T1 fighters. It also means that you desperately want to keep them alive. But yeah, it also grants them a little more flexibility on the field, and I really like that. I think that's definitely something to be aware of. That was 5 medium tanks that they just burst down over the course of just a couple seconds there. I'm pretty impressed. I think as far as the range of possibilities you're going to be able to go for here now that there's multiple uses for fighters, I think it's definitely going to be well worth investing in T1 a whole lot more than just jumping up to T2. Before this, there was basically no reason to go for T1 unless your opponent was just going into crazy T1. But that almost never happened. You almost always wanted to just go directly into T2 because it was significantly better. But it looks like now there's going to be a little bit more of a reason for it. Hopefully this was an informative look. This is my first look, and if it was your first look, you can let me know down below in the comments, I suppose. Yeah, as I said, I wasn't made aware of it until I was, and I'm pretty excited about it. I think it could definitely bring some well-needed change to the airplay currently in the game, and I'm thrilled to see where it'll go. As always, I hope you enjoyed today. I know it was a little bit of a different episode, but as always, trying to bring you the very best and Beyond All Reason content. So I will see you in the very next Beyond All Reason video. Peace out, folks.